Welcome to your lecture about conducting research and writing a research paper. This week, we're going to focus on just two things: using the library and writing a research paper. Writing a solid paper is one of the most important skills you will learn in college. Clear and concise research and writing skills will help you tremendously in both your academic and professional career. Are you ready to get started? Let's dive on in. Let's begin this week's lecture by identifying the most important and helpful areas in the library. First, which library will you visit in your community? Your town may have a county library, which will work perfectly for your research paper, or perhaps there is an online library you can access through your school. Sometimes local colleges and universities will let you utilize their services even if you are not enrolled as a student, although they may charge a fee. Wherever you choose to go, make sure you call in advance so you can become familiar with the library's policy. When you get to the library, you'll want to go to the following places to get started on your research paper. Main desk. Check out the main desk when you first arrive at the library. Here you can likely obtain a map of the library and find out about the layout so it's easier for you to search for relevant books and materials. Library catalog. The library catalog is one of the most helpful tools you will find in the whole library. While some libraries have card catalogs, most libraries nowadays use a computer to store all the information. You will use the library catalog to look up materials that can be found in the library. When you're looking for materials in a library, you have the option of searching by the subject, author, or title. For example, let's say you wanted to check out a book by Stephen King. You would type in King, Stephen. See how the last name comes first? This is a very important detail. If you were to type Stephen, King, the computer or card catalog would pull up authors with the last name Stephen and the first name King. If you want to search by the title of the book, type the title right into the search box. However, if the book begins with A or the, you will likely have to put these unimportant words last. For example, if a book's title was The Basics of Interpersonal Communication, what would you type to search for the book? You'd type Basics of Interpersonal Communication, the. Let's try one more. What would you type if you were searching for a book with the title A Writer's Reference? You would type Writer's Reference, A. Unless you're doing research on a particular topic, you'll probably find that searching by author and title is the most effective method to locate the material you're looking for. However, if you're doing a research paper on a specific subject, like the death penalty, a subject search will be helpful because it will pull up all the related material that will probably come in handy for your research. For example, if you wanted to search for the death penalty, you would just type death penalty. You might get a lot of results from a subject search, but when you're writing a research paper, the more sources, the better. When you're searching the library shelves or book stacks, as they are referred to in the library, you'll want to keep an eye out for the call number of the book. The call number is listed in both the library catalog and on the spine of the book. To find the correct book, start with a number or letter on the left and work your way over to the right. After you've located the books that look like they will be helpful to your research, you should move on to periodicals. Periodicals include magazines, newspapers, and journals. Examples of periodicals include the newspaper, the San Francisco Chronicle, Time magazine, and the American Journal of Public Health. Periodicals are an extremely useful resource when you're writing a research paper. Articles and journals present information differently than textbooks do. For example, say you have a textbook with a chapter about homelessness in the United States. I'm sure that chapter would provide you with lots of important information about this issue, but if you were to read an article in the Los Angeles Times about homelessness in Los Angeles, you would have a different perspective about the issue. And the article might even have insightful interviews with homeless people in LA. In short, periodicals often have a different tone than books, so you should always strive to incorporate both sources in your papers. Your work will be full of rich material from a variety of sources, which can make your research paper more enjoyable for your reader. Now let's change gears and turn our focus to the Internet. As an online student, you already know how much the Internet has influenced your life. Well, when it comes to research, the Internet is literally a library at your fingertips. If you know the proper ways to go about your research, you will find that you can find helpful and relevant sources that you can access in your pajamas if you want to. But a word of caution is necessary. There's a lot of junk out there on the Internet too, and you must learn how to avoid it. Before you begin any of your research, you should take a few minutes and see if your school has access to an online library. If your school does have access to an online library, check it out. You'll likely have to enter your student ID number and password, and then you will have access to scholarly publications online. If you want to search for a specific book to purchase, you might try a number of websites, including Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and Half.com. Or you can go to the Library of Congress website. The Library of Congress has a copy of every single book that is published in the U.S. If you need to locate any information about the book, check out their site at www.loc.gov. To find some online articles or journals, you might try a number of things. Sometimes when I want to find an article about any topic, such as the death penalty, I'll just go directly to the website of a leading national newspaper and type in my search in the search box on the screen. Oftentimes you'll find you have to register as a member at these sites, but it's often free to register, and doing so will give you access to tons of articles. For example, you might go to the New York Times website at www.newyorktimes.com. When you get there, just type your subject into the search box and click on the articles that appeal to you. Keep in mind that you should not be too specific in your searches. For example, it wouldn't be smart to look up death penalty statistics for Little Rock, Arkansas, 1989. You might get lucky and find something, but that's a pretty narrow search. Instead, it would be better to write Death Penalty Statistics, United States, and see what comes up. It's better to scroll through material and deem it irrelevant than to make your searches so specific that nothing comes up. I also want to remind all of you to use your Learning Information Resource Network, or LIRN, when searching for scholarly publications. You can access your LIRN under the Course Home tab of your course. You can also try www.google.com and click on the News tab at the top of the screen. You can then type in your subject in the search box, and relevant news articles will turn up. Additionally, you can select Scholar from the top of the screen on the Google page, right by the News tab. There is a drop-down menu that you can access by clicking on the arrow right next to the word More. Once you have selected Scholar, type your subject in the search box, and you will be able to review journals and scholarly sources related to your topic. Lastly, it's smart to search for information on a regular search engine, like www.yahoo.com or www.google.com, and type in your research topic in the search engine box. You'll probably find many sources that will aid you further in your research. One last note before we wrap up our discussion of the Internet. You should always make sure to evaluate your sources before using them for a research paper. This means that you can't just use the first website that pops up on a search. Only credible sources can be used for academic purposes. This means that you should never use anything from Wikipedia.com or About.com or anything created by a person or organization that does not appear to be professional. For example, if you're researching the death penalty, you should use online information from government websites and nonprofit organizations like the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU. You should not, however, cite a personal website created by someone who is either extremely pro-death penalty or anti-death penalty. You can check out those sites on your own time, but they're not impartial, and if you cite them in your schoolwork, your work will appear biased and not objective, which is not something you want to do. Now that you've learned how to find sources for research papers, it's time to turn our focus to actually writing a paper. First off, you'll have to pick your topic, assuming you have a say in the matter, that is. You may have to write a paper on a topic that you would never pick in a million years. But if you're lucky enough to choose the topic of your paper, try to pick a topic that won't be too difficult to research. You don't want to select a topic that has never been researched, or you won't be able to find any information to use for sources. Once you know your topic, you should use the methods above to find relevant information, online and at the library. You should then create a detailed outline of your paper that maps out how you plan to write your thoughts. Make sure your outline contains your thesis. Your thesis is kind of like the beating heart of your paper. It's the main idea, or the point you are trying to make. When you set out to write any paper, you have to think of the point you're trying to make. For example, if I'm researching the death penalty, I might be trying to show in my paper that the death penalty is not a deterrent for violent crime. My thesis might be something like, the death penalty is not a deterrent to violent crime, and therefore should be abolished in the United States. Although we've just gone over coming up with a thesis, you should read more about it in your textbook and lectures. After all, if you don't have a solid thesis, you won't have a solid paper. Once you have your thesis, it's time to make an outline. Your outline can be made in a number of ways, but always try to think of the point I'm going to make in each paragraph, and how that paragraph will relate to my thesis. A friend of mine once told me that your thesis should be so clear in your essay that a passerby could only read one paragraph and understand the point you're trying to make. This means that any time you introduce new information into your paper, you should ask yourself, how does this relate to my thesis? Your outline might look like this. Thesis. The death penalty is not a deterrent to violent crime, and therefore should be abolished in the United States. Support. 1. Statistics have shown that the crime rate has not gone down as a result of capital punishment. 2. Taxpayers pay millions of dollars to support people who will eventually be executed. So the money is not allocated to areas where we desperately need funding to prevent crime, like education. 3. The United States is one of the only industrialized countries that has the death penalty. Once you have your outline planned, you should take lots and lots of notes. Keep a notebook and pen or pencil nearby when you're reading periodicals, books, or online information. Jot down or highlight information that stands out to you, and bookmark your pages so you can quote them later on when you're writing. You'll want to start out with an introductory paragraph that warms your reader up and lets them know what your paper is about and how you plan to go about writing it. Follow your outline when you're writing, and always make sure to back up your claims anytime you introduce a new statement or idea. For example, if you were to write the following statement, you would not have sufficient evidence to back it up. It has been proven that the death penalty does not discourage people from committing violent crime. This claim is not common knowledge, so you're going to have to prove the claim to your readers, and you're going to have to show where you got your information. So you could say, it has been proven that the death penalty does not discourage people from committing violent crime. According to the American Civil Liberties Union, or ACLU, information from the Death Penalty Information Center in Washington, D.C., shows that the national murder rate has not shown a significant difference since the death penalty was reinstated in 1976. The murder rate was 8.8 in 1976, when there were no executions. In 1995, there were 56 executions, and the murder rate was still 8. In the example above, do you see how I cited a survey and incorporated that information into my paper? I needed concrete facts to help drive my claim home. Simply writing, it has been proven that the death penalty does not discourage people from committing violent crime, would not have been enough information to convince anyone that what I'm saying is true. Keep this information in mind when you're writing, and make sure to read and reference the sample essay in your textbook. It's helpful to have a visual aid on hand to help you when you feel unsure of where to go next in your writing process. We've already talked about citing your sources as you write, but you should also make sure that you include a bibliography with your work. A bibliography is an alphabetized list of all the books you read, written in a format that shows the reader the year, version, and author of the sources you used in your paper. Here's a sample bibliography of a book. Adams, Eric, The Last Bastion, Fall of Hong Kong, London, Oxford University Press, 1985. You can also visit the website www.easybib.com to help you format your bibliography. EasyBib.com just lets you plug in the individual information from your source, and it formats the rest for you. You can also just type something like bibliography examples in a search engine like Google, and a ton of websites will turn up that can provide examples that you can reference as you type your bibliography. Keep in mind that bibliography format varies depending on the source. There are different formats for journals, magazines, newspapers, online sources, and pretty much every type of material you can get your hands on. So make sure you're using the proper format when you are creating your bibliography.